Imagine waking up and there's this invisible web of technology tracking your every single move, predicting what you might do next, and maybe even restricting your freedom. For millions in China, this isn't some, sci-fi scenario. It's their actual daily reality. We're going to unpack a really chilling case today, one that brings us all home. A farmer, Yang Guliang, in Jiangsu province. He was paralyzed, bedridden, but somehow under constant watch by a high-tech body camera attached to his IV drip, capturing every little twitch. And his family. They basically became prisoners in their own house, flagged by a digital system as troublemakers, their movements watched.
It's a deeply disturbing picture, isn't it? And what's crucial for you listening to grasp is that, look, this isn't some fictional story. This is the real result of China's incredibly vast, sophisticated surveillance machine. We're talking about a system with more security cameras than the entire rest of the world combined. Think about that.
Yeah.
Roughly one camera for every 2 citizens. That number alone, it should make anyone stop and think.
Yeah, 1 for every 2. That's staggering.
Yeah.
And it immediately makes you ask, okay, how did this happen? How did it get built? So what we're diving into today, what we're calling the Silicon Shadow, is exactly that journey, how this digital cage was constructed over decades. And what's really striking, and honestly what surprised us when we looked into it, was the significant role, sometimes even foundational help, from some huge names in American technology. So our mission today, explore the origins, the tech behind it, the human stories which are vital, and of course the global implications of this, unprecedented surveillance state.
Exactly. We're aiming to pull back the curtain, really,
Yes.
to show how a vision that maybe started as, modernizing law enforcement kind of spiraled into something much, much more pervasive and, frankly, controlling than maybe anyone initially imagined. This deep dive, it's going to reveal those layers.
Okay, let's get into it then, starting right at the foundation. Back in the early 2000s, China's leaders, they had this big idea, this vision for something called the Golden Shield. The goal was a nationwide policing system, right? To maintain order as the country was changing so fast. But here's the thing. At that point, China's own tech infrastructure for something like this was, it was pretty basic. Rudimentary, almost non-existent for that scale.
That's spot on. They had the ambition, absolutely, but not really the homegrown tech to pull it off. And this is precisely where American companies saw their opening. They were eager, understandably maybe, to get into that massive Chinese market. So these giants, they stepped in, they provided not just, boxes of hardware, but the actual blueprints, the foundational designs needed to get this whole thing started. It was a massive opportunity for them, a gateway to this huge untapped economy.
And leading the charge, maybe surprisingly for some listeners, was IBM. And we found this wasn't just about selling standard computers, was it? They were apparently collaborating directly with Chinese entities to design systems specifically for mass control. We found that in 2009, IBM actually partnered with Huadi, that's a Chinese defense contractor, with known ties to the military and security services, to craft Beijing's core policing platform. So this wasn't just tech sales. This is like architecting the framework, the system for internet censorship, for tracking dissidents, whether they were labeled terrorists or Falun Gong practitioners or, even just villagers protesting about local land grabs.
Yeah, it's really remarkable how deeply IBM software got embedded. Their I2 software, which is powerful stuff, originally designed for analyzing huge police data sets, maybe in a more neutral way, it became a cornerstone of this whole surveillance apparatus. Through the 2010s, this software was sold directly to really critical units, the police in Xinjiang, China's Ministry of State Security. And the key thing here, I think, is how these seemingly neutral data analysis tools, once you put them in an authoritarian context, they fundamentally changed policing. It shifts from just solving crimes after they happen to this proactive, predictive surveillance, basically defining and trying to preempt dissent based on analyzing massive amounts of information.
That's such a critical point. So it wasn't just off-the-shelf plug-and-play software. It was deeply integrated, almost tailored for a specific philosophy of control. How much did IBM actually know about how these threats were being defined by the system? Or was it kind of a black box for them?
Well, that's the multi-billion-dollar question, isn't it? Companies might say, we didn't oversee the specific end use, but when you partner directly with a defense contractor like Huadi, it does imply a certain level of awareness about the, let's say, broader goals. And it gets even more sophisticated. A Chinese partner firm, Landasoft, they apparently adapted and even copied this IBM software to build their own predictive policing platform. Just think about that for a second. A system designed to flag hundreds of thousands of people as potential terrorists before they've actually done anything wrong. It completely flips the script, The burden of proof shifts onto the individual to prove they aren't a threat.
And this raises huge questions about predictive policing itself, anywhere, really. but especially there. If we look at Xinjiang, say, 2017, there was this system, the Integrated Joint Operations Platform, IJOP. In just 1 week, it flagged over 24,000 people as suspicious. And the reports say most of them were then detained. So this isn't about reacting to crime anymore. It's about preempting dissent, identifying risk based on patterns that can be incredibly broad, subjective, and often devastating for the people flagged.
Exactly. It's a system practically designed to cast an incredibly wide net, often without any clear legal definition of what even constitutes a threat in the first place.
But okay, it wasn't just IBM involved in building this digital arsenal. The contributions really came from across the American tech landscape. Like in 2019, Dell, another huge American name, they teamed up with a Chinese firm. They were promoting a military-grade laptop equipped with AI for what they actually called all-race recognition. Now, military-grade, that's not just marketing fluff, right? That implies serious capability, robustness, designed for national security uses, not just checking your email. This machine could scan faces, any ethnic background, match them against databases super fast, and it was marketed explicitly as a tool for stability maintenance, which we know in the party's language means keeping tight control over the population.
And then you had companies like Cisco. They supplied the absolutely essential networking gear, the routers, the switches. This formed the actual backbone for big initiatives like the Internet Police and the Sharp Eyes program. Sharp Eyes deployed cameras across huge swaths of rural China, linking them all back to central command centers. It's about creating this pervasive web, right? Connecting every village, every town square into one single monitorable network.
And naturally, all this footage, all this data being generated 24/7, it has to be stored somewhere. It's an unimaginable amount of data. That's where data storage giants like Seagate and Western Digital came in. They provided hard drives specifically optimized for storing these endless streams of AI-processed video. That's a massive infrastructure piece, a foundation layer people might not even think about.
It absolutely is. And the contributions went even deeper, even into biotech, which is quite chilling. We found evidence that Thermo Fisher Scientific, a major U.S. biotech firm, sold DNA analysis kits to Chinese police. And these kits were reportedly tailored for profiling ethnic minorities, specifically Uyghurs and Tibetans. So this isn't just about solving crimes with DNA. This helped build huge genetic databases, essentially weaponizing biology, turning it into another tool for surveillance and identification based on ancestry.
Wow. And then you have the actual brains of the operation, the AI.
Oh, right.
AI powerhouses like Intel and NVIDIA, they supplied the processing chips, the literal silicon, powering the AI and camera systems from China's biggest surveillance firms. NVIDIA, for instance, their powerful chips like the H20 series, these advanced AI accelerators, they enabled things like gait recognition. That means identifying people just by how they walk, even if you can't see their face clearly.
Right. And companies like Waitrix and GEO AI use these very chips to develop AI patrol drones that can hover over crowds, scanning, looking for anomalies in real-time behavior. The idea of AI drones spotting anomalies, whatever that means in real time, it takes surveillance to a whole different, almost science fiction level, but it's real.
The way all these different technologies converge, networking, storage, biotech, advanced AI chips, it's kind of breathtaking in a terrifying way. It wasn't just selling individual products here and there. It was like providing all the pieces, the digital bricks for China to build this entire surveillance architecture, all built on American innovation.
Precisely, an interlocking technological ecosystem.
So we've laid out how this incredibly powerful integrated system was built piece by American piece. But to really understand the weight of it all, we have to turn to the human cost. The stories of lives caught, tangled, and fundamentally changed by this digital net. Think about Norelli Iblis. He was an engineer, worked for the government in Xinjiang. Now he's in exile in Germany. He described watching in horror as the systems he actually helped maintain started flagging innocent people for detention based on these vague risk scores. He actually said he thought this was the end of humanity.
That sentiment, it just captures the profound ethical line that was crossed there. And Xinjiang really became the epicenter, the testing ground for this level of control. American source tech was the foundation for a campaign that ultimately saw over 1 million people, mostly Uyghurs and other minorities, detained in these so-called re-education camps. You had nearly 100,000 officials doing door-to-door data collection, wired through 7,000 police outposts, all feeding algorithms that literally decided people's fates.
Right.
It's industrialized social control.
And the individual stories are just heartbreaking. We heard about Parita Kabilki, an ethnic Kazakh pharmacist. She got swept up in this dragnet. Why? For perfectly normal things like visiting her family abroad. That flagged her. She ended up enduring interrogation, detention, just for living a normal life.
And there was Liu Yuliang, a former civil servant in Xinjiang. He put it very starkly. He said the technology itself is emotionless, but in the wrong hands, it's deadly. He warned, and this is a direct quote, "The Xinjiang model is being copied everywhere, in every city in China. This technology has no emotions, but in the hands of a government that doesn't respect the law, it becomes a tool for evil."
That's a chilling warning about how easily this model could spread.
Is that really happening? Is the Xinjiang model truly being copied across China, or is that maybe an exaggeration, a fear? Well, our research suggests it's definitely more than just a fear. While the sheer scale of the detention camps might be somewhat unique to Xinjiang, the underlying tech, the pervasive surveillance, the predictive policing platforms, the social credit aspects that is being rolled out more broadly, we found cases like teachers, Kabinut Brzik, who's now in the Netherlands. She was targeted for things like using certain phone apps or just having relatives overseas, things most of us wouldn't think twice about. And let's go back to the Yang family in Chengdu, the story we opened with. Their nightmare started with a simple land dispute. It escalated into years of them petitioning against local corruption. So what happened? They got labeled for abnormal petitioning, put under residential surveillance, basically digital house arrest. And get this, it cost the police around $37,000 just to enforce that on this one family.
$37,000 for one family. That cost alone tells you how much resources being poured into this. And Yang Guoliang's wife, Xu Dongqing, their daughters, they faced constant monitoring, travel bans, phone taps, even threats to their relatives if they didn't comply. It's not just physical confinement.
Yeah.
It's this psychological social prisons designed to isolate them, break their spirit.
Absolutely. And Yang Kaing, the elder daughter, she's now in exile in Japan, and she had a direct warning for all of us. She said, because of this technology, we have no freedom at all. At the moment, it's us Chinese that are suffering the consequences, but sooner or later, Americans and others, too, will lose their freedoms.
That's a really sobering thought. How real is that threat? Could this shadow actually spread beyond China?
Her warning really hits home because these aren't just isolated horror stories. We're talking tens of thousands of people across China, from Tibet to Beijing, facing similar kinds of restrictions. Some estimates suggest 55,000 to maybe 110,000 people have been under this kind of residential surveillance in just Xinjiang and Tibet over the last decade. And the system creates this chilling ripple effect. It pressures whole families, entire communities into self-censorship because they're terrified of being flagged by an algorithm. It's like a vast social engineering project.
Okay, so given these terrible human costs, how do the U.S. companies involved explain themselves? How do they justify it? Many of them, understandably perhaps, point to just complying with the laws and export controls that existed at the time. IBM, for example, they call their past dealings old, stale. They state they banned sales to police in Tibet and Xinjiang back in 2015, and they suspended ties with that defense contractor, Huadi, in 2019.
Right. And NVIDIA, similarly, insists its H20 chips weren't designed specifically for surveillance, although they power it. They also said they ended relationships with firms like Watrix and GEO AI, the drone companies, by 2022. Cisco's former lawyer, Katie Shea, she disputes that Cisco was directly involved in abuses. She acknowledges the suffering, but defends the company's actions as being within the legal framework back then.
And other big players, Intel, Oracle, they follow all of the sanctions, but often they sell through third-party distributors, right? Which adds another layer of maybe plausible deniability.
Yeah.
But it raises the question, is just following the law enough? Is legal compliance a sufficient ethical shield when the end result is enabling such widespread human rights abuses? Is legal always moral here, especially given the scale we're talking about?
That's really the heart of the debate, isn't it? And it's a critical question for you, the listener, to think about. What's clear from our deep dive is that experts looking at this point out significant loopholes in past regulations. For instance, the sanctions put in place after Tiananmen Square in 1989, they banned certain sales, sure, but they didn't cover modern AI tech or general-purpose computer hardware that could easily be repurposed for surveillance. Export controls are incredibly complicated things. And sales, well, they flowed pretty freely for years, even though Congress raised warnings. It wasn't really until the international outrage over Xinjiang hit its peak around 2019 that things started to tighten up significantly. The law just couldn't keep pace with the tech and its uses.
Yeah, Valentin Weber, a researcher at the German Council on Foreign Relations, he summed it up so powerfully. He basically said, everything was built on American tech. China's capability was close to zero. That just highlights the absolutely fundamental role U.S. technology played in making this possible.
It does. And Raj Pala, an expert in international trade law, he also points to potential legal inconsistencies, but stresses, we need all the specific facts for each case. It's a complex legal picture that allowed this to happen, but the moral questions for the companies involved, they definitely linger.
So connecting this all to the bigger picture,
Yeah.
there's a really profound irony here, isn't there? This whole tech boom, it likely started with intentions that seemed okay on the surface, modernizing law enforcement, making society safer, more efficient maybe. But in China, under that specific political system, it morphed into this incredibly potent tool for authoritarian control. It almost echoes historical figures like Mao Zedong, whose portrait still hangs over Tiananmen Square, now surrounded by all these cameras.
It really does raise that crucial question about technology itself. How even tools with benign origins can be, well, weaponized by power. And under Xi Jinping's leadership, the focus shifted even more towards preempting threats, not just reacting to them. The system expanded rapidly from the big cities out into the most remote rural areas. It became this total society-wide approach, a digital ecosystem of control.
And the impact now is truly global. China isn't keeping this tech to itself. It's actively exporting these surveillance systems and technologies to other countries, nations like Iran, Russia. It's essentially turning itself into a global surveillance superpower, offering a ready-made template for other authoritarian regimes.
Which forces us, really, to look closer to home, too. Because similar AI technologies, maybe not on the same scale yet, but similar underlying tech, is being used here in the U.S. for tracking migrants, for example. Or it plays a role in conflicts like the Israel-Hamas war. It's a really profound cautionary tale about what can happen when innovation, no matter how brilliant, meets unchecked power. The ease with which these powerful tools can be repurposed for control, that's a lesson we really need to absorb.
And just so you know, uncovering this intricate web, it wasn't easy. It took some incredibly painstaking work by journalists. They had to sift through over 20,000 leaked emails from that company, Landasoft, classified documents from Wadi, thousands of government procurement bids. They interviewed over 100 sources, exiles, executives, officials, meticulously cross-referencing leaks with public records. And the result is this stark picture, this reminder that technology always has a double edge, and sometimes that edge cuts incredibly deep.
Absolutely. And as we all hurtle towards futures that are more and more connected, technologically integrated, China's digital police state, it stands as this chilling mirror, really. It shows us in stark detail how tools that might be created with the intention to protect can, in the wrong hands, very easily become tools to imprison. And it leaves us, I think, with a hugely important question to ponder for you to think about. Who is watching the watchers, and what safeguards can we realistically put in place to prevent this kind of digital shatter from spreading even further, potentially touching lives everywhere, maybe including our own in ways we don't even foresee yet?